Early game in Starfield can be slightly more difficult than previous titles from Bethesda. However, with today's video, we're going to show you how to get your hands on a very good early armor set and a very good early ship that will help your journey proceed fairly smoothly. And what I will say is these items are pretty overpowered if you get them early enough. Either way, guys, don't forget to leave a like, a comment, and subscribe. Now, the first part of this requires a little bit of luck and a little bit of RNG. What you want is this item here. Now, this is typically dropped from the spacer enemies that appear in the game, so you can encounter them in several different ways. There's missions that have spacers as the key antagonists, and there is also, when you explore the terrain of different worlds or different planets, you can find them in man-made kind of outposts or just out in the middle of nowhere. Now you want to kill spacers until they drop this item. In here, it talks about a secret outpost and gives you a location on where you need to go. Now it's at this point you'll probably notice that the location in which you need to travel to for this mission is in the ass end of nowhere. And if you've received this item early enough in the game, you will be nowhere near it. So what you're going to have to do is jump to different systems and make your way to the actual system gradually. Taking on space fights and any other number of threats that might take you on in space. A note I would also make about this is that the level for this area is technically level 30. But I went there much earlier than that myself. After some journeying, you'll eventually make it to the Denny Bola system, and where you're wanting to head is to the planet labelled Denny Bola IB, and you will then select the secret outpost that is labelled on the planet's surface and use it as a landing zone. Now, this is where the real mission begins. From the very outset, you will be under attack from spacers, so make sure that you're ready for a fight and take them down as well as you can. Now, I will reiterate that some of these enemies are up to level 30. Most of them are not, but there are some that are level 30. So if you're unprepared, you could easily be killed quite often during attempting this mission. Now, once you've cleared the outside, obviously you need to clear the inside. Head inside the lair of the Mantis and defeat any enemies you come across. On top of this, it would be very useful if you had your lockpicking skill upgraded, because this will allow you to open quite a lot of lock chests inside the building, which have quite decent loot in it. So I would definitely recommend you've leveled it at least some before you come here, in order to get full access to the loot without having to backtrack later on. Either way though, you're going to want to defeat enemies until you come across a named NPC that you can interact with. Now, I'm going to be honest, how you interact with this NPC doesn't really matter to the end result of the quest, but if you're promising him stuff, he might try and take some of the loot. I don't really know. I murdered him in cold blood because he's a snivelling little weasel. That's really entirely down to you. You do you when it comes to it and play the character whatever way you want. Now, the next part of this is a puzzle room. Essentially, there is a room filled with turrets, letters on the floor, and dead bodies. Now, you can approach this in three different ways. You can hack the terminal that is nearby, which allows you to disable the auto turrets and therefore the trap. You can run through and ignore the turrets and the dead bodies and just try and make your way to the other side. Or you can solve the puzzle. Now, the other two, that's really up to you. If you want to go Rambo or whatnot, feel free. But in order to solve the puzzle, you're going to need to pay attention to the audio logs that have been scattered throughout the facility. And there is a specific word that has been stated by the person in these logs that is relevant to what you see here. And if you don't want to see it on screen, look away now. Or you could just skip this part of the video. So this is the home stretch of this quest. You've got a couple more robots to beat up, some turrets to destroy, and a bunch of more things to unlock. But once you make your way inside to the deepest part of the lair, you'll come face to face with the Mantis's ship, the Razorleaf. Now, I know you've been following the mission prompts already, so just continue doing that. Eventually, the ship will go topside, where you can acquire it officially, and you'll get access to the other part of this quest, the Mantis Armor set, which is not only awesome looking, but is also very good for early game combat. And that's pretty much the mission itself finished, but let's talk a little bit about the rewards, starting with the armour. So first off, we have the Sentinel Mantis spacesuit, which gives you 15% less energy damage. It gives you a resource weight reduction of 25%, which is awesome for carrying stuff, and a Sentinel's effect, which should be familiar to anybody that's played Fallout 4 or Fallout 76, which has a 75% chance to reduce damage by 50% when standing still, which is really good for when you're reloading and things like that. Then we have the Assisted Carry Mantis Backpack, which gives you a reduction to ballistic damage, or physical damage rather, from ranged weapons by 15%, an additional 25% radiation resistance, as well as Assisted Carry, which reduces O2 consumption by 75% when running while encumbered. This is really good for transporting resources to and from your ship and to town as well. So definitely a great item. And then last but not least, we have the armor helmet, which once again reduces energy damage by 15%. It gives you 10% damage to scanned targets, which is always good, having an extra 10% damage, and 20% accuracy while firing on the move, which means you can run around and shoot things a lot easier. Now, on top of this, the armor and the protection on these bits of gear is quite high by comparison to everything else. So yeah, it is awesome. So the Razorleaf, I'm not going to go into in the greatest of detail because I'm not as familiar with the ship parts yet in the game. But for early game, this thing is absolutely busted to hell. As you can see, you've got about 420 cargo, 469 hull, and a 140 fuel. Your weapons are A-class, which is bonkers for an early game weapon, as is your shield and your gravity drive. So this thing is absolutely insane in combat and in general right at the beginning. Late game, that could be completely different, but early game, this thing is absolutely bananas. And the proof is in the pudding. Now, let's take you on a little tour of the ship. This is the cockpit area, and what I'd say about the ship is it's relatively small. There's no crafting benches or anything really major for you to do in here. It is primarily like a fighter type ship. You've got the navigation console and that. There's your bit to go down below, as well as your way out of the ship. Now, this is the interesting place on this ship. Up here, you have basically a armory where you can display weapons and gear in the different display cases and whatnot that you've got here. So as you can see, I've just chucked a load of stuff in, and this is what really makes this ship unique. You can pop weapons in the racks, you can just pop a lot of different things in different places. This does, however, I believe, add to the ship's weight, so it doesn't make it the most optimum for transporting cargo if you're doing that, but it is something that you can do, and obviously you can upgrade the ship in certain ways. Either way, hopefully you've enjoyed this video. Hopefully it's given you some information about the Mantis mission, and you know, it's helped you out. If it has, don't forget to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, and we'll catch you in the next one.
Sunny day, right there you took my breath away. A young and pretty, was it just a dream?